recording first. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. Perfect. Alrighty. So like I said, feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A. We're going to answer them as they come in. Since we're just at the beginning and I don't have any questions just yet, let's go over some resources and open to close, and we'll hopefully we'll have some questions pile in between then. If you guys don't have questions, definitely feel free to share any feedback on like how things have been, how have you been building in the system, what are some wins, what are some areas where you're feeling a little bit of growing pains, or if there's any subjects that you guys want to take a deep dive in and learn a little bit about more on today's call. So talking about just resources within Open to Close, we have our little chat bubble down here, and we have the ability to send a message. You can chat with us anytime you guys need it. Definitely feel free to reach out to us here. If you're experiencing any kind of like bugs or issues or something like that, definitely feel free to send over a loom or screenshots as well. Both of those are super helpful for our support team and our developer, just in case, to kind of triage and see what are the steps that you are taking to get the result that you're getting, and why aren't we seeing what we need to see, type of thing. So definitely feel free to drop them, reach out to us here. You can also email us at help@open2close if you just have general questions, you figure an email works better for you. Up at the top underneath this little person icon, we have our support center. Our support center is where you're going to find any articles in regards to any of the topics that we might cover today. This is also a great place to come and look for any videos if you're wanting to see examples of certain things. So for example, if you wanted to look at more information on Smartblocks, you would type in Smartblocks, and now it's going to pull in all the information for Smartblocks. All right, looks like we got our first question. We are new users and have 3 listings in Skysclope. 1 is under contract. What's the process to move these over to Open to Close and move forward? So first things first, we'll want to make sure that that Skysclope integration is connected in Open to Close. So we're going to head down to our gear icon, head into Apps and API, and then here we're going to go to Manage Profiles. And we're going to add in that profile to Open to Close. We also have an article. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that open on Skysclope and how to make that connection. There's actually some stuff that I learned from Skysclope recently. I have notes on like just some of the best practices and functionality for Skysclope. Obviously, there's always changes to integrations, and the flow of where you click on things and where you add in things is always going to change. But when it comes to just, adding in a under contract property, it should be as simple as once you've made that connection, you head over to new here. If you'd like to import that from Skysclope, you can select import from Skysclope. Obviously, I don't have a Skysclope connected right now, so I'm going to show you what it kind of looks like through Dotloop. You click on import. Here, it's going to take you to the profile. It's going to ask you to choose the profile for Skysclope that you want to connect to. You can sort and search for those particular Skysclope properties. Once you feel good about it, you can select an API field mapping template. I'm just going to go ahead and click on this one and say next. Once I say next here, I can add in some, I can double check the team. So let's go ahead and just assign this to one of our users. After you add in your users, it's going to ask you to fill in the data. This is, again, very similar to what that Skysclope integration looks like. So here, client type, we'll go ahead and say this is buyer, and then the contract status, we'll go ahead and say it's under contract. Definitely double check the contacts. Make sure you're bringing in the appropriate people if you need to. Same thing with the documents if you have it. Property templates are a great way to have en masse apply the different kind of processes that you guys handle. As you're getting started with Open to Close, if you're importing your transactions from Skysclope, property templates are going to make it so much easier for you to get a date template onto that transaction, to get the other task templates that you have on that transaction, some document templates, and any other things that you might need to bring on through here. So including like a field template if you needed to. So here I can just select, let's say it's a buyer's template. It'll show me the list of the templates that I have currently on that one. So these are the task templates that I have, a document templates, field template, and a date template. Next, I can go down onto the settings and I can just update the settings if I'd like to. The default details tab is going to be your transaction details. So if we choose and we leave it on choose tab, totally fine. It'll just default to that transaction details. If you're importing a listing, it might make sense to actually have the listing details. Just depends on what your process is. The communication tab is going to be what screen do we want it to open up on every single time we open up that property. So in this case, we have the option to choose tasks, emails, documents, contacts, notes, and summary and status. Typically, I see people just leaving it at the standard, which is tasks. After that, you're going to select import. Now it says import loop, but you'd be importing your Skysclope and that property will populate. Once the property's populated, it's going to look a little something like this. It's going to have its fields on there. It's going to have those task templates on there, those documents on here. If we wanted to look more deeply at that integration, we could go to more, and then we could locate where it says Skysclope, and you could go to that Skysclope. Again, I don't have a Skysclope account connected to my account just yet, so I'm going to go to Dotloop. This is very similar to what it looks like for that under contract for Skysclope. So you're going to be able to see, you can import details, import contacts, import documents, or open it up in Skysclope. So it just kind of depends on what you need. The other way that you can have it is that you can have that property already in open to close, whether you're bringing it in through new property and you're filling out the information here and creating a manual property, or you're filling out an intake form that you've built out. Once that property's been submitted, I'm just going to go to my submissions, grab onto Santa Monica. Here's that submission. I can approve that property. Go ahead and approve it. It all looks good to me. And then I can go to our More tab. Once this loads, there we go. Go to our More tab, head over to that Skysclope integration. And again, I don't have a Skysclope integration in this case. I'm going to click on Dotloop, but you can link it to a property that's already existing in Skysclope, or you can export this property out of open to close into Skysclope if you need to populate it in there. Let me know if that helped answer your question. Some hints or some tips that I've learned with Skysclope, because recently we did this big review with it and we kind of learned a little bit more about it. I learned that there's a specific click pattern that you need to go through when it comes to Skysclope. So if we wanted to export this property as a, let me go to our Dotloop just to show you guys. We wanted to export that property out of open to close. Oh, fantastic. Wonderful, David. If we wanted to export this property out of open to close into Skysclope as a listing, the steps that I found people take is first, we're going to set up that export and we're going to push it over into Skysclope. Once it's pushed into Skysclope, we're going to open up that Skysclope property and we're going to check it. We're going to check the details, make sure that looked good. And then you're going to press next at the bottom of that Skysclope property that's populated. Once you do that, you can then export the contacts from open to close. So we can go to contacts. Let me go to one that actually has contacts on it. We can go to contacts. Once we're on our contacts tab, we can click on expand. And then here where it says add to Dotloop, it would say add to Skysclope. You can push over your contacts through from open to close to Skysclope. And then from there, you'll select next in Skysclope and then submit. And then that way Skysclope populates correctly. I've seen some people do it where they push over the details and then they push over the contacts, and then they're missing some of those tabs at the top of that particular transaction. It's not showing the documents or the checklist appropriately. And it just has to do with the steps that you're doing it in. Skysclope's integration, we're working with it as best as we possibly can. And let me know if you guys need an example of that. We're building out a really solid article with just that best practice and that suggestion. Alrighty, we have another question. What is the benefit of seeing the incomplete intake form submissions? Yeah, so this can sometimes give you an idea if anyone's filled out that intake form or started to, and then they canceled it for any reason. It also allows you to, keep track of, like, let's say you have someone reach out, like one of my agents reaches out and goes, hey, I submitted a property to you a couple days ago and I still haven't heard anything from you on it or how it's been. You can go to our submitted to see any intake forms that have been submitted to you. If we scroll all the way to the side, it'll show you the date that it was created. For the incomplete one, let's say you look at that and you go, I don't see a property with that address. You can also use that to check out the incomplete intake forms as well. So let's say someone submitted it to you. They didn't completely fill it out. Maybe they thought they did, or they press submit, or they press the, when you're on that intake form, they populated some of the information and then they said save and continue, and they thought that submitted it. But instead they actually just, said save and continue and then closed out of the tab. This will allow you to see whether or not that was even initially started. Now, when it comes to incomplete intake forms like this, you can technically reach out to Open to Close and see if we can push the intake form through. The only caveat with that is that usually it's missing some of its details, right? Some of those details weren't captured by the agent, and so that property is going to be incomplete. I also believe that some of the triggers don't come onto it appropriately. So what we typically suggest is if you see that there's an incomplete intake form, your agent's telling you that you need that property filled out, I would suggest that the agent fill out the intake form again. And this time, just make sure to submit it completely to you guys. That way you can make sure you can process that particular transaction. Cool. Alrighty, next question. Is there a way to have a Smartblock add a document? I have different documents for different locations that I serve. Right now I have several email templates. However, is there a way to say if it's a certain area, add X document? So Smartblocks are specifically only for verbiage. Let's open up a Smartblock though. So I'm going to press Control S. You can also navigate to Smartblocks by clicking on this 3-line icon and heading down to our our hammer icon and clicking on Smartblocks here. But if we take a peek at a Smartblock, let's just grab financing expectations. When we're looking at that Smartblock, what I want you guys to take notice of is obviously it's got its name or merge field. We've got that body, but when we scroll to the bottom, we don't have those same options as what we do have for our emails, where we can attach a file. And the main reason is that Smartblocks are only meant to bring on verbiage, not necessarily documents. But that is a good suggestion. So if you haven't already, Melissa, I would definitely suggest submitting that to our Idea Lab. I'm not sure what that kind of build out would look like. Again, the developers would have to investigate into it, but it is a really, it's an interesting idea to think, well, if I say if I say that we have for example, let me go to my Smartblocks. If I say that we have HOA responsibilities, maybe not only do I want to send this, but I want to send like an information sheet on like the standards for HOA. That might be, something that's of interest to other people as well. Alrighty, next question. In Smartblocks, can you explain what Inline does? Yes. So taking a look at some of these Smartblocks here, you can see that we've got two switches. We've got a green switch, and then next to that, we have this other switch. If I scroll up to the top, this one says team lead co-agent signature. It's got a 1, and it has this purple switch turned on. What Inline means is that instead of having it on its own separate paragraph, it's going to make it so that it merges well in line with the verbiage that you guys have in your email templates. So if we click on this particular one, we're going to see here that it just says and buyer co-agent full name. So the intent behind this is that if you do have a co-buyer agent and you want to introduce them on the transaction, what you can do is you can use this merge field here with its inline capabilities, again, as long as the switch is turned on, and it's going to keep it in line instead of creating a new paragraph. Just to give you guys a peek at what that looks like, let's go ahead and head into our email templates. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab this one right here. It looks like it's got some values on it already, just talking about different stuff. It says, hello, I've been waiting to talk to you. Let's go ahead and say this is your, and then we'll, and then we'll pop in the buyer agent first name. So I'm going to click on our 3-line icon to get to our merge fields. We'll go to our contact roles. We'll click on buyer's agent. So I'm just searching it for buyer's agent. Once we have buyer agent open, I'm going to go ahead and grab the agent full name and paste that in there. And then I'm going to go to Smartblocks and I'm going to look for that team lead co-agent signature. I think that this is the one that we were looking for. And I'm going to paste that in here as well. I'm not going to make any spaces. I'm not going to add any periods. I'm not going to add any, actually, I think I'm going to add a comma at the end of this. But I'm not going to add any spaces to it. I want it to be pressed right up against that buyer's full name. If I want to preview what the smart block looks like, I can highlight the smart block and click on SB just to double check, make sure that we have the right one. So this says co-buyer's agent. We might want to rechange that smart block name just because this says it says team lead co-agent. I think it should just say buyer's agent. But now that we have this smart block in here, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the name of this template just to make it easier for myself. We're going to head to a property. Let's go ahead and go to West Taylor Road. I'm going to head to our contacts, and I'm just going to see we've got a buyer's agent here. I don't see a co-buyer's agent and another buyer's agent. So let's go ahead and change this to the appraiser, just so we have our one buyer's agent on here. So we've got our one buyer's agent up here at the very top. We're going to head to emails. We can click on apply template. We can search for that email template and say apply. What I want you guys to take notice is that right now it just says Pam Malta. That's my buyer's agent right now. Let's say they had a co-buyer's agent. Let's go ahead and add that co-buyer agent. So I'm going to add on, let's go ahead and add on Hannah. Once I've added Hannah right here, I'm going to change this from buyer to our co-buyer agent. Here we are, co-buyer's agent, buyer's agent. Let's head back to our email. We're going to select apply again. We're going to locate that email template and say apply. And now that we've done that, it says this is Pam Malta and Hannah Hoxie. So that's kind of what that inline Smartblock does. Now I'm going to show you guys what it looks like when it's not inline. That way you can see what it looks like and you can kind of think, okay, if I need to do troubleshooting, what do I need to do? I'm going to do Control S to open up that Smartblocks. I'm going to locate the Smartblock that I want to test. We're going to turn off that inline really quickly, and we're going to reapply this email template. This is also just to show you how quickly these rules apply. So once I've refreshed that, if you notice, oh, now it says and Hannah Hoxie, and it put that comma on a new line as well. So when we don't have it set as inline, what it's going to do is it's going to take it and add it in there as if it's a new paragraph to this particular email. Again, I'm going to click on Control S, pop open those smart blocks, turn on that inline. The moment I turn it on and I reapply that email template, we're going to see that inline option update. And it now says, this is Hannah and Pam. Let me know if you have any more questions on that or what that would look like. Alrighty, we are quiet in the QA right now. So let's go ahead and talk about, oh, never mind, I lied. Where can we find keyboard shortcuts? That's our next question. So we're going to click on our little person icon up here at the top. We're going to click on keyboard shortcuts right here. Now I know that sometimes some of the keyboard shortcuts do work for some of the, for some of our users who are on Macs, and sometimes it doesn't. I would just make sure that you're selected into the system. Sometimes, if I click on a different tab or I click outside of my tab, maybe I've got multiple screens. When I'm not on open to close, if I try to use my smart blocks, like right now, I'm trying to do Control S to pull open smart blocks, it might not populate. So I would definitely want to select into the body of it, then try Control S. And if you noticed, it closed out of that panel and it opened up our smart block panel. So again, I'm going to go to our keyboard shortcuts. Definitely feel free to take a peek through these. Some of them you can do on all areas of the system. Some of them you can only do when you're on a property. Down here at the bottom, this little asterisk shows you which ones are only available on the property. And it kind of makes sense, right? Property file drawer. Well, we would need to be on a property to see the file drawer for that one. Same thing with the property details, right? If we wanted to look at a specific property details, we'd want to be on that property to be able to review it. Okay. Next question. Is there a way to see who's in a contact group without adding it to a transaction? Yes, there's a couple different ways. First things first, we can head to our 3-line icon. We can head down to our filters. We can go into our groups. Here we can see the groups that are available. So I just wanted to show you guys this so you can see what groups are here. When we're on that property, and we're going to that contact here, and we're saying we want to assign the contact group. When you select the group that you want to add, and let me see if I have anyone on here. Here you go. It's going to show us a list of those party members first before we assign that contact group. So here you can review, cool, these are my party members that I need to add, assign that contact group if I'd like to. Awesome. Next question.
Oh, just really quickly here, and I didn't want to interrupt you. I was chatting with our team here on the side. Perfect. There was an interesting idea. Rather than using documents with smart blocks, you can actually do it through the email template if the documents are static. So if you don't need to, be having additional information, you can upload your documents to your file storage. So that'll also be on the side there. And then down here, once you've uploaded your file storage, you could just in your email template say, oh, hey, I need to add this document every time. and it'll automatically load in there. So you don't necessarily use the Smartblock, but you can attach it directly to the email template. Technically, I guess you could also just use upload attachment and just upload it there, but I feel like it makes more sense to just put in your file storage since it's something you're going to be reusing.
For the file storage, Matthew, where would I go on the front end to see where I could upload files into my file
go back
storage?
into the template section you were just in.
Okay, so let's go to hammer icon templates.
Yep.
And
it's kind of a weird spot for it, but it is here. So because there's the imports we have at the bottom, right there is the file storage.
Oh, file storage. Oh my gosh, I would have been blind to that. Thank you for pointing that out. I was like, where is that located?
Well, you have like templates, and then we have file storage, imports. So it's just hidden right there at the end.
Awesome. Perfect. So yeah, just like Matthew said, here's that file storage. You could add in those files here, and then you can have them automatically on those emails via the file storage here. You can also upload individual attachments if you need to, but that's a really, really great option there to upload those instead. Awesome. Alrighty, next question. Can you speak on Drive integration functionality a bit more? We briefly mentioned it on the onboarding session, but kind of glossed over it. What's the typical use for Drive integration? What are the pros and cons? Yeah, absolutely. So if we're looking at a property, I'm just going to go to our Ivy Lane one, and we go over to our documents, and we head over to our Google Drive option here. When we talk about connecting to the Google Drive, one of the main pros of this is that obviously you can have the information in the documents download automatically and upload automatically into open to close. I know a lot of our users like to use it where they get that initial property, right? So I'm going to go to our intake submissions, say submitted. Once that property gets submitted over to us, typically this is when we'd want to go to documents. We would want to connect it to Google Drive before we get any further on that transaction. And the reason we suggest doing it at the very, very beginning is because once you turn on that auto sync, it's going to have that auto sync live for the entire lifespan of that particular property. Another additional kind of part of it that's kind of great about this is that if you need to keep a copy of your documents and downloaded into your Google Drive, having that auto sync is really, really helpful instead of you having to, let's say you're emailing the documents into open to close through the property email address, but you also have to like download the documents from that email and save it into your Google Drive. Using the Google Drive here makes it a lot easier to have that auto sync. When the documents come in, you put them in their file, and then they go to that specific root folder, and they're kept safely inside of your guys' Google Drive. As for cons, I think that the only con that I've seen is maybe when you make that connection to Google Drive, whether it's at the end or at the beginning, or whether or not you made sure to select that auto sync or not. You can have it where you have it connected, but you still have to manually push it over, or you can have it that it's auto connected and automatically downloading and uploading. Team, is there anything extra or additional about Google Drive that I just didn't think to include in this moment in my description?
I would say, because we use it quite frequently to store documents. However, it does not work with shared drives. So you can use it with your drive, but if you have a shared workspace drive, it won't work with that.
Oh, that's a really good piece of information for that. So yeah, I didn't even know that because I haven't really necessarily had to sync any of my test properties to my Google Drive just yet, but that's a really great piece of information. Does anyone else have anything to share about the Google Drive ones?
Yeah, just one thing to note here, kind of like a lot of different pieces of when you're in a property, what email am I going to use? The system's going to look at the team user. So that Google Drive connection is going to be similar. Whoever is the main team user assigned to that transaction, it's going to be looking for their connection to the Google Drive. So
yeah, I think that's a perfect note. So whatever you've connected here underneath your apps and APIs, whatever address you have selected here that's added into here, it's going to be the same Google Drive account that's connected on the property as long as it's assigned to that party member. So here you can see this one's assigned to implementation demo. That would be to my email. So this would be my Google Drive. If we go to another property like this webinar one, this one's assigned to Rory. And technically if Rory's Google was set up, it would be through Rory's Google Drive. So you can see here, Rory doesn't have a Google Drive or a Google API connected. That's what that screen looks like if you guys try to set it up and you can't. Looks like we have a follow-up question. So if you have this set up properly and the files upload to the placeholders, would automatically update to Google Drive without further action. So yes, it depends on a couple extra settings. So I'm going to go to, oh, actually, no, this is a perfect example. So here I've got these three documents here. They're called test 3, and test 4. For test 3, it has a document on it. If we wanted to update that name so that it matches to whatever this actual document is, let me click on this document, see what it is. Cool. It's just a purchase agreement. So we'll go ahead and click on test 3. We're going to locate that purchase agreement. We'll go ahead and say it's the fully executed one. When I update it, it's going to update that name. So if you have that already up, that setting turned on in your backend, and we'll go ahead and take a peek at where that setting is, it is going to have that name in Google Drive. So when you're setting up that root folder and you're saying, I need it to go here, what I typically suggest is when you say, I need it to go here into this particular root folder, I would grab the name of the address and pop that as the name of the root folder. And then every document that gets uploaded, as long as you have this setting turned on, when that file role is assigned to that file, and then it's downloaded into Google Drive, it's going to say purchase contract FE in that particular root folder. So where do I go to see that setting? We're going to exit out of our property. We're going to head down to our gear icon. We're going to head into our global settings. Once we're in our global settings, I believe it's underneath defaults. I just want to make sure that I don't see it here. Google Drive settings. So this Google Drive settings allows you to see the contents of the folders inside of properties that are assigned to you. By default, you can only see Google Drive folders. You can only see your Google Drive folder contents inside of a property. Oh, so that's a really good thing to point out. I think it's underneath our defaults and settings. Yes, it is. Awesome. So underneath our defaults and settings, we're looking for rename the main file. As long as this says yes, rename, what that's going to do is when that file role gets applied, it's going to rename it to whatever that file role is. Let me know if there's any follow-up, if there's more follow-up with that one, Wes, and I can dig a little bit deeper to it. Awesome. Our next question is, can you explain the different widgets on the dashboard? Absolutely. So first things first, I'm going to remove all of our widgets because I want to show you guys how easy it is. When you guys first get started with open to close and you get through that first screen where it asks you, upload a transaction, right? Or start a new transaction. Once you're done adding in that transaction, or if you try to add it in and then you close out of it, this is the next screen you're going to see. If you want to add on widgets, we have a number of widgets right here. If you do not see this option here, this panel might be collapsed. So just keep that in mind. We're looking for that little arrow right next to our little dashboard icon. I'm going to click on that arrow. It's going to show us it again. So we've got our property history, contact history, intake submissions, unapproved documents, trigger by priority, and property notifications. I'm going to add them all on here just so we can take a peek at each one. Our property history is going to show us the last 25 properties that I selected. So it's not going to show you your intake forms that came in. It's going to show you all the properties that I was last clicking on. So here we see webinar at the top, then Ivy Lane, then that intake form we looked at, that intake form we approved, and then another property that I clicked on some point after these ones, or before these ones, I should say. I can scroll through this again, like I said, and search through them if I need to. Next to that, we have our contact history. This is showing the last 25 contacts that you clicked on within open to close. If your contact history widget is empty, that means that we haven't necessarily gone to the contacts tab and opened up any contacts here. When I go through and I, let's say, open up Bernice, I've looked at Bernice. Cool. Let me go back over to my dashboard. It should update that particular list. Looks like it's not doing it right now. It most likely is caching, I think, on my end, most likely because I'm on Zoom. But it would show you your last 25 contacts that you've looked at. Below that, we have the intake form submission widget. What this intake form submission widget does is it allows you to see what intake forms have recently been submitted. It does show you the ones that are assigned to you. So if you're on a specific team, you only see your transactions. Here, you're going to see only the intake forms that were submitted to you. You can click on those intake forms from this page, review the information, and approve them if you'd like to. Next to that, we have our unapproved documents widget. This widget here pops in and it shows any documents that have been emailed in or have been uploaded in or came in through into open to close and they have not been approved yet. Even documents like ones from Docusign can show up in this unapproved property documents. So this is a great widget to have on your dashboard if you're receiving a lot of documents and you're not necessarily double checking on that property. When you click on that document, it'll allow you to review the document. You can pop it into its placeholder here if you'd like to, and then you can say approve. You can also click on the address, which I think is really cool, and go directly to that address and update that document as well. So here you can say that it says there's one document to review. We can click on review document. It'll take us to our tab. We can review this document if we want to. Below that, we have our triggers by priority. This triggers by priority is just showing us all the triggers that we have currently. I'm going to click on where it says due. So anything that's red is going to be due today. Anything that's yellow is going to do in 1 day. And anything that's blue is going to be due in 2 days. If I click on where it says due, it's going to show me all of the triggers that are currently due within my system. Doesn't matter the address. You can see here, this one's got Harper Drive, Prominent Peaks, Birchwood Drive, Ivy Lane, Birchwood, and so on and so forth. It shows me all of the ones that are there. I can use some filtering. Has an error. Do I want to look at the ones that have an error or not? Do I want to see ones that are due immediately or have a date, or only has a date, right? So it kind of just depends. You can kind of change the filter here. We can also click on trigger options. It's going to expand those triggers for us. That way we can see more details as to what this trigger does. You know, we can see the conditions for it, who it's assigned to, edit the tags. Whenever you guys are done reviewing those triggers, similar to how I showed you guys on our workshop today, we can either select the triggers en masse, right? So I can go through and I can select the triggers that I need to. Selecting the triggers is specifically for emails. And we can say schedule, and we can schedule them. Each one of those triggers, even if they're on separate properties. So here you can see Prominent Peaks, Harper Drive, and I selected Birchwood. When I schedule those triggers, you're going to want to go to that property to make sure that that one's scheduled. If you'd like to double check it. Now, some of these triggers are not just emails. You can see here that we've got some templates as well that need to be added onto it. These templates could be task templates. They could be document templates. So clicking on it looks like this one's a seller task template, and the one above it is a inspection document template. So these are just triggers that go based off of, you know, what templates do we need to apply to a property. Let me know if there's any more questions on this widget. I really like this one as like a very quick way to see what's going on with my properties. Now, obviously for me, I've got 86 past due triggers. So it's not very helpful for me, but for you guys, when it comes to logging into open to close, if you're like, well, just before I get my morning coffee, I'm going to open up open to close. I'm going to double check my triggers by priority. This is a really great widget to just quickly pop open, see what's due today. You know, maybe you'll have 5 or 6 in the morning. You can just double check them. Oh, cool. Yeah, I can get to them after I'm done, you know, making my espresso, whatever that looks like for you guys. Next to that, we have property notifications. This is just going to be notifications as to what's happening on individual properties, what's been received, what's been sent, that kind of stuff. So here we can see that a lot of property documents have been received on a couple different properties. That's the notifications that we're receiving here. Anytime we want to refresh any of these, we can click on that little refresh button on our widgets. It looks like it's only going to be for these 2 specific ones down here at the bottom. I believe that's because the rest of these are based off of what's been submitted. Now, typically, what do I see on a dashboard? I'm going to touch on that really quickly before we get to the next question. What I usually see is people have their property history, they have their triggers by priority, intake submission, and unapproved documents. I don't really see many people having their contact history on there unless they're just getting started and they're kind of going through back and forth with their contacts. And property notifications, typically you're on that property reviewing those notifications. You could have this one, but the reason I like this set is because number one, it shows me the last properties that I've selected. It shows me my triggers that I can click on really quickly when I log in for my day. Any intake forms that have been submitted, I can review. And if a property or a document was emailed in, I see that top of mind right when I log into my system. So that's kind of usually the set that I suggest. Obviously, you can have all of them if you need to. Like I said, you can drag and drop them to change the order. You can click on the little X button to delete them if you want to. Typically, this is the order in which I have mine, but you guys can have it that your intake forms are first and then your triggers by priority, your triggers priority first, whatever makes sense to you, whatever click path makes, is easiest for you. Awesome. Next question. Is there a way to automatically upload to Dotloop/Docusign like you do with Google Drive? No, not at this time. Pushing out documents from open to close to those other integrations would be a manual situation. When we're talking about that Dotloop, I believe that we can, let me double check. Okay, so we can select the documents and then we can export them to Docusign if you needed to get signatures. When we want to upload to Dotloop, we're going to want to select that drop down. And if I had this connected to Dotloop, let me go to Ivy Link because I believe I have this one, Ivy Link connected to Dotloop. Let's go to documents really quickly. Here's our documents. When I select that drop down here, I can select upload to Dotloop and that will push it over from open to close into Dotloop. It is a manual selection each time for those documents that you need to push over. All right, next question. Can you go over the choices in the email tab within a transaction? How do you use properties, emails, API, synced emails, scanned emails? Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to click on that little email tab up here. This is where we're talking about. So when we're on a property, we'll go to the email tab. At the very top, we can see compose. This is where we're entering in that email content. You can always preview email templates here. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll preview Smartblocks just to make sure things look good. Below that, we have our scheduled. So this is showing you any emails that are scheduled. Right now, it looks like I'm getting an API error. What this means is that I just need to refresh my connection to Google Drive. Below that, I can see any emails that were sent from the property. Property emails are going to be properties or emails that are related to the property. So like, let's say I've emailed in documents to this property email address. This is where we're going to see a history of all the emails that have been received. When we send out emails for signature, I believe we should also see it there. Let me see if I can go to my Reading Street and we'll see if I have some information on this one. Oh, emails. Property emails. So here's an example of what that looks like. So I sent out something through Docusign to get signatures. When it came back into open to close, this is the email that came into open to close. So it lets me know, hey, here's the information. Here's the attachments. And then that summary, commission summary, went directly into my documents tab. From there, I was able to approve it and put it into its proper placeholder. So that's an example of what those property emails look like. For API synced emails, this is if I had a label and I wanted to sync it to a very specific label within my Gmail account. Again, like I said, I'm going to need to refresh my Gmail API sync to make sure that that's working appropriately. But this is where I could pull in emails to say, oh, I want to look at this very specific tag I have in my Gmails, and I want to have it associated with this. Sometimes people will use those mailbox labels as addresses. It just kind of depends on what your use case is for it. For scanned emails, this will allow you to like go through and pull in and scan those emails again. So if we wanted to see, okay, wait, do we have all the emails? Do I need to rescan and pull in fresh emails? You can technically click on scanned emails. Now, obviously you can see here, you've not applied an API mailbox label. We would need to apply that first before we could scan and pull in fresh emails. Let me see if there's any follow-up questions to that. Okay, with the property emails, is that from Sync? I don't think I've ever noticed I have anything in there. Yes, so property emails come in when an email has been received by the property email address. So if you're utilizing this property email address, when a document sent back into open to close and it's sent to this property email address, here underneath property emails, you should see a copy of that email. I would definitely double check. In this area, again, like I said, we did this through Docusign, but if I were to go and I were to email in some documents through that property email address, I would get a copy of that email here, as well as have those documents populate in my documents tab as long as they're attached. Alrighty. Let me see, are there any other ones that are associated with what we were just talking about? Yes. Before we jump over to the other questions, we've got a question that says, if emails are sent to the property address, I'm guessing images and parts of people's signatures will also come through as attachments. Suppose this is why there's approve, disapprove. Is there a way to preview the files before approving? Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and head to that one property that I had that screenshot. When a document comes in that's unapproved, it looks like this. We can click on the screenshot or whatever image it is, and we can see what that image is here. It looks like this is not necessarily anything. It looks like it's just an image of a line, or like a screenshot. But you would be able to review that document by clicking on here and reviewing it. Now, if the imagery is inside the email, like inside the body of the email, you're technically not going to have that populate. What comes into open to close is the attachments. So if it's any kind of attachment, it'll come in, it'll be an unapproved document. You can review that document and then pop it into its proper placeholder. But if it's if it's like in the body of the email, a screenshot or a Loom video, a Loom video wouldn't work necessarily, but if it was like a PDF, well, it's mainly just images, I think, inside of email templates, like inside the body of the email. That's not going to come in because it's not a quote unquote attachment, if that makes sense. You see if there's any other. Okay, I've noticed in the Gmail integration, those images in email signatures come to the attachment tabs. Interesting. Yeah. So it's most likely something that's setting with Gmail. I think I've noticed that as well, that sometimes when I receive emails from coworkers or other clients, that sometimes their signatures will come in as an attachment as well. So yeah, if it does come in as an attachment on that email, if it is an attachment, it will come to the unapproved, it'll come into those documents as an unapproved document for you to review and go from there. Awesome. Alrighty. So back to the top. In the property tables, when you share a table with a user, can they make changes to the table columns, or do you keep the main control of the shared table? Can you go over sharing property tables, please? Absolutely. So let's head over to our little house icon. Once we're on our house icon, here we're talking about tables and segments. Just going to give a little overview of what a table and segment is. So tables, think of that as your big bucket. This is where all of you can set it that you have all of your properties showing. And then your segments are going to be your baby buckets. So these are going to be like individual broken down views. When we're sharing the information, so I'm going to go ahead and head to all. We wanted to share this particular table with other people. We're going to want to scroll down to the very bottom of this left-hand column here. We're going to click on table users, and then we can select the other party members that we want to share. When you select other party members and you want to give them options to see it, here we're selecting what do we want to give them options to do. Do we want to give them options to edit? Do we want to give them options to add snapshots, which I believe is segments, or do we want to give them options to export? Matthew, can we make a note that says snapshots and see if that is intended to mean segments? Here, though, this is where you're determining what kind of permissions you want to give them. If I just say that Rory needs to see it, Rory's only going to be able to see it and see what I've created versus being able to edit it. If I give Rory access to edit this particular filter right here, let's go ahead and test it out. So I've given Rory access to this table. When I give Rory access to the table and I have them as the editor as well, that should give them access to these segments as well. Let's see if I have got another one. I think I have one that's called transactions. Let's see if I have any segments underneath here. Cool. I have segments underneath this one. Let me make sure I have Rory on here. I'll make sure that she has all of the access. We're going to go ahead and head over to our person icon in the top right-hand corner. We'll go to organization, and I'm going to really quickly just impersonate Rory, and we're going to do this together. We're going to see, do they have permission to change things? Will it change it for the main user? So now that I'm in Rory's account, we can tell by the red banner up at the top. If you ever log into your open to close account, maybe you reopen the tab and you didn't close out or log out properly before you closed it out. If you see this red banner, just keep in mind that you're probably impersonating. Click on this little impersonation icon right here, and that'll take you back into your original profile. We're going to head to properties. Here we see transactions. Here we see segments. So let's change some things. We're going to click on table columns, and we're going to delete this, and we're going to move up this, and we're going to grab our closing date. Bring that up as well. We're going to go to contacts, and I'm going to say I want to see the buyer at the very top as well. And I want to see the seller at the very top as well. Here's our seller. Once I add on those columns, I'm going to want to order them in whatever order I need them to be, and then say update. So now that I've updated it, it says buyer, seller, contract acceptance, so on and so forth. If I go to the segments, So here's my segments, and I changed the segments here too. So I clicked on buyers close. What I want you guys to take notice is that when I clicked on it, the filters changed and the number of properties changed as well. This is what I mean by big bucket, right? All of the transactions. Again, I'm just going to click back onto transactions to take us back into that big bucket. This is big bucket. It's showing us everything, no filters. But the moment we select one of those segments, it filters it down and shows us only the buyer or dual that are marked as closed. So I'm going to click on table columns here as well. Closing date's fine. Let's say I want to, once again, add on some contacts. We'll add on that buyer. We'll add on that seller. We're going to bring them to the top as well, just so that we can have some consistency to take a peek at. I'm going to go ahead and say update. And now we have these values here. So we've made some updates. We've changed what the table it looks like. Here we can see what's been shared with us. This one is the one that belongs to Rory. So we've changed what that column header looks like up at the top. We've changed something in the segments for this particular table and segment view as well. Let's go ahead and unimpersonate from Rory. We'll head over into our house icon again. And when we open that up, buyer, seller, and if we go to that segment, we're going to see buyer and seller. So if you give them access to edit the tables, they will have the ability to change those tables. When they change those tables, it does change it across the board for every other user as well. This is something to keep in mind whenever you're creating tables and segments for your team. You might not want to give them access to edit everything. You might want to control some of that stuff. Regardless, your other team members, if we go back to organization users, we go back to impersonating Rory. Regardless, I always say that your internal users should have at least one table that belongs to them with their own set of segments to make it easier for them to be able to see, okay, this is my view. I know what I have from my filters if I need to double check it. If your guys' process is that they're going to use these ones, then I would just train it in that you're going to go to shared with me, select the one that you need to select, and then you can view the table, the segments here. And then again, I would use those rules when you're looking at it as the admin and you're giving share permission to those particular tables and segments. I would just give them, maybe just view access only instead of editor, export, and snapshot access. Let me know if there are any more questions on sharing for that. We'll go ahead and get to the next question.
Real quick, Hannah. I just want to give you a quick confirmation. The snapshots does reflect segments. Actually, in our next deployment, we have updated the UI. It's gonna show segments just so there's not that weird difference. So that is your segment. So if you take off, snapshots segments, they will not be able to view it. Even if they're in editor, if you take off snapshots, they won't be able to see those snapshots at all. Vice versa, if you have snapshots on, you take off editing, they can see everything without. They just can't change anything.
Awesome. So if they have editor on, they'll be able to edit it, but they won't be able to view the snapshots. If they have snapshots on, they'll be able to view the table, view the snapshots, but not be able to edit anything.
Yep. Perfect. And just a little sneak peek for everybody, just throwing this out here, just so you're aware. We did the same sorts of options here for sharing with the contact table. So you're going to see a lot of the same exact functionality for your contact table. Right now, we don't really have that option to do so. You can see, are you no? Go ahead and click on Rory Miller for me. Just want to make sure. Yeah. Okay. So you could notice you could share the table, but you don't have all those additional options. So you're going to have a lot more control of that with our next coming deployment. Wonderful.
Thank you, Matthew. Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, cool. Oh, I'm glad that you clarified that because I totally forgot that that I mentioned that. That's why I said that. That's why I said make sure to remind me of that. Awesome. Alrighty. So we've got our next question going back to file naming. I noticed that files I was uploading to Skysclope were renamed. It sounds like they're being named when uploaded to open to close rather than when being sent from open to close. Is that a correct assessment? And would that be the same setting as the Google Drive file name or a separate one? So when we talk about renaming documents within open to close, I'm going to head back to our gear icon down into our global settings, and I'm going to go to our defaults, renaming the main file. So this is regardless whether it's Docusign, Skysclope, Google Drive, whatever you guys might be using. This is specifically talking about what is it going to be when you upload a document into open to close and you assign a file role. Do you want that document to be renamed to the new file role name? As long as we have this set to yes, it's going to rename that file role. Same thing with the additional files. If we had this set up as yes, rename file, it would rename those additional files in that one placeholder to that parent file role name. So if we go and look at it on a property, I'm going to go ahead and go back to our dashboard, and I'm going to click on Ivy Lane. I'm going to go back into our documents. Whenever we make that connection here and we've added in, so for example, this one's called sample documents. If I change this to our, and I'm just going to scroll through and say it's our Weld County report, it is going to rename that document to Weld County report. So regardless of where I'm pushing it to next, that is going to be the name that's associated with this file. If I push it to Skysclope, still going to be called Weld County report. If I push it to Dotloop, still going to be called Weld County report. If I push it to Docusign or Google Drive, it's still going to be called Weld County report. Let me know if that makes sense. Our next question on the agent portal, can they see all the emails that have been sent? Would the API emails be something that they can see, or just what was sent through open to close? So it kind of depends. Obviously, it depends on when we're talking about giving them permission to the agent portal. We're talking about like, what do they need? Where are we giving them permission at? If we have them added in through the agent portal, so we go to organization, you've added them in as an agent portal user, we'll go ahead and take a peek at that in just a moment. But if you have them added in as an additional kind of like portal roles, maybe you want to give them viewable access, but not like access to like submitting intake forms, because sometimes that can happen. Maybe you have a co-agent who just needs to view the information, but they don't exactly need to have access to submitting an intake form. We can click on permissions when we're setting up those permissions, and we can decide what information gets added in here. Emails are not included in this one at all, so they're not going to be able to see any of these. When we go and impersonate an agent, so let's go ahead and grab our agent OTC one, the top. When we impersonate our agent and we're taking a look at a transaction, let's go ahead and grab this webinar one, because I think I've sent out some emails from this. We see our details, our timeline. Let's go down to emails. Here's a copy of those emails. You can see here that some of them are showing that they sent through Microsoft if they were going through the API, and some of them went through the non-API. When I click on those emails, it's going to show me a preview of what that email looks like. So it does show those emails that were sent out. So it's not just going to be the API or non-API emails. It's going to be any email sent from this particular property. Let me know if that clarified things for you, or if you're seeing something different in your account, definitely let us know. How did you attach the video to the email? You're probably talking about when I clicked on this and you, oh wait, which one was it? Let's click through them again. Was it this top one? So this is just a GIF. I just copy pasted that one in there. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily how it looked when I sent it out or when it was received by the person. But this here is just a GIF that was inserted into this particular email. Let's go see if I can find this one on the property. Typically when GIFs are inserted in, they're inserted in through the email template. You can also insert email GIFs into the body of the email template. So here, if I wanted to insert a gift, I could click on our little insert image. I would want to upload that particular image here, and then that image would be added in here. So this is how I'd be adding that in. When it comes to other videos, like if you wanted to add in, like, let's say a Loom video, the way that it puts it in there, it doesn't show a preview of it like we've seen before. You know, when you send out a Loom video, it shows like it can sometimes show that little GIF preview. Instead, when you send out that Loom video, it'd be a link. Similar to how when you guys send emails or chats to us, it shows just the link. It would show that for your clients too. Let me know if that makes sense. Alrighty, guys, we're very close to the end of time. Awesome. If there are any other questions, definitely feel free to pop them in. I'm just going to talk about resources within open to close, touching back on that. So again, up here at the little person icon, like I said, we've got our support lab. We've also got our idea lab. This is where you guys can submit any ideas that you have in regards to things that you might need to, that you want to see in open to close. We are making our way through this list and updating ideas and kind of going through it and working on our completed list as well. So definitely double check this if you guys are interested. We also have the change log, which is being kept up to date by Matthew. Thank you, Matthew. And here on this change log, it'll show you the different things that are kind of going on with open to close, the different updates that we've made. If there are any things that you guys may have asked for example, like that native spell check feature. One caveat I think with this is that sometimes if you have something where, let's say you have, what is that one called? Grammarly installed, it might override the native spell check that's in there. So just keep that in mind. If you're like, oh, I don't see the spell check, you know, I only see Grammarly's options. You can disable Grammarly, the widget for this particular, you know, if you have it on as an add-on, you can disable it for this particular page and then have it that, you know, when it reloads, it uses the native spell checker. I think that that's one thing that I wanted to share with you guys. Is there anything else that my team wants to share with the rest of our users for today? Awesome, guys. No more questions.
You nailed everything. Sorry, Hannah. I was trying to
No,
unmute.
you're totally good. It's hard to know, like, for the pause for that. Other than that, like I said, and I say this every single Wednesday workshop, if you go to our main website and you go to our Learn tab and you go to webinars, you're going to see the list of the webinars that we have coming up. Today, we covered emails and text messages. Next week, we're going to be covering tasks and triggers, and then contacts. We're going to be covering documents the following week, and settings and integration next, I think in 2 weeks. We also have recordings of these. So if you guys are interested in reviewing, maybe you're like, I can't wait, Hannah, I really need to get my settings and integration set up. Definitely feel free to reach out to us and support. We will send you one of the previously recorded options. Some of those previously recorded settings and integration calls are really fantastic because I showed what it looks like when you send a document through Docusign and when you send it through Dotloop as well. So they kind of give you a deeper dive on those particular integrations. So if you're interested in that, definitely feel free to reach out and we'll get you a copy of that. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Make sure to drink water, stay warm, stay cool, stay safe, and I will see you guys next week. Absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us today.